My beloved child, there is something unusual happening around your name right now. If you listen carefully, you may begin to understand why this moment carries more meaning than it first appears. Someone you love has been standing in a place filled with emotion, reflection, and hesitation. Their heart has been moving through thoughts they have not fully shared. They have been trying to understand feelings that seem simple one moment and complicated the next. Near this person are two voices, two different minds, two different ways of seeing the same situation. One voice speaks with confidence, the other speaks with caution. And what they are saying has created a quiet tension that has not yet reached you, but it is already influencing what happens next. This is not a small conversation. This is not a passing comment that will be forgotten tomorrow. Something important is forming beneath the surface. There are discussions happening when you are not present. What makes them unusual is the weight your name carries whenever it enters the room. Your name is not spoken casually. It is not treated lightly. Every word connected to you seems to be chosen carefully, almost as if people are afraid of saying too much or revealing more than they intended. One of those friends believes there is something rare about you, something difficult to explain, something that cannot be measured with simple words. That person notices details that many others overlook. They notice the way you continue moving forward after disappointment. They notice the quiet strength you carry when life becomes difficult. They notice how you remain yourself, even when circumstances encourage you to become someone else. Most of all, they notice how your presence seems to stay with people long after you are gone. According to this friend, there are certain people who leave an impression for a moment. Then there are people who leave questions behind. You belong to the second group. People continue thinking about you long after the interaction ends. People revisit memories connected to you and discover new meaning in them later. That is what makes you difficult to forget. But the second friend does not speak in the same way. Their voice carries concern. Not because they dislike you, not because they doubt your character, but because they believe your presence creates deeper emotions than people expect. They think closeness to you changes things. They think feelings become stronger. They think decisions become more difficult once someone allows themselves to become emotionally connected. They believe your influence reaches deeper than what appears on the surface, and that is why the discussion becomes intense. These are not shallow observations. These are opinions built through attention, through memory, through moments that may have seemed insignificant when they happened, moments that were noticed and remembered anyway. What makes all of this even more meaningful is that the person you love does not interrupt either voice. They listen carefully. Every sentence reaches them. Every opinion creates another thought. Every observation opens another question. They hear admiration from one side. They hear hesitation from the other. And somewhere between those two perspectives, they are trying to understand what they truly feel. Recently, your name appeared unexpectedly during a conversation. The atmosphere changed immediately. The room did not remain the same. A pause appeared. A look was exchanged. Something shifted. One friend leaned forward and spoke with certainty. They explained that your heart is far deeper than most people realize. They said you carry many things quietly. They said your silence often communicates more than words ever could. The other friend responded thoughtfully. They agreed that depth exists, but they also believed depth can be difficult. Not everyone knows how to understand someone who feels deeply without expressing everything openly. Not everyone knows how to respond to that kind of emotional presence. And still, your name remained at the center of the conversation. The person you love listened to every word. As they listened, memories began returning. Small memories, simple memories, moments that never seemed important enough to explain to anyone else. A sentence you once spoke, a look that lasted slightly longer than expected, a moment that appeared ordinary to everyone around you, but somehow became unforgettable to them. Those memories resurfaced one by one, and because of that, The opinions being shared suddenly carried greater weight. One friend believes your presence brings a feeling of safety. They believe people feel understood around you. They believe there is comfort in the way you remain genuine, even when others misunderstand you. The second friend sees something different. They believe your presence brings change. They believe people who become close to you rarely remain exactly the same. They think your influence encourages reflection. They think your presence forces people to face emotions they may have avoided before. And while both perspectives are different, neither one dismisses your importance. That is what makes the conversation so powerful. The person you love becomes quieter as the discussion continues. Because hidden inside their silence is a question they have been trying not to ask. Why does your name still affect so much? Why do certain memories return so easily? Why do emotions become stronger whenever thoughts of you appear? The conversation continues. But there is another reason these opinions become stronger. Something has changed recently. A small detail revealed more than expected. Perhaps it was your patience. Perhaps it was your distance. Perhaps it was the way you did not seek attention when many others would have. Perhaps it was the way you allowed time to speak instead of forcing yourself into every situation. Whatever the reason, it made people notice something important. Your value is not loud. Your value reveals itself slowly. It is discovered over time, and once it is discovered, it becomes difficult to ignore. That realization caused one friend to become even more certain. They said losing connection with you would be a mistake. They believed people often fail to recognize rare things until they are no longer available. The other friend responded carefully. They said closeness to you may create emotions that become difficult to control. Not because anything is wrong, but because genuine connection always carries risk. It asks people to become honest. It asks people to become vulnerable. It asks people to acknowledge feelings they would rather avoid. The person you love listened to both viewpoints, and something inside them continued paying attention. Because they realized both friends had reached powerful conclusions while looking at the same person. You. One saw reassurance, the other saw transformation. One saw comfort, the other saw emotional impact. Yet neither voice suggested indifference, neither voice suggested forgetting, neither voice suggested that your presence meant nothing. As the discussion continued, the person you love began comparing every opinion to what they personally knew about you. And they reached a realization they could not ignore. Every time they tried placing you into an ordinary category, something stopped them. Something refused to fit. Something about you remained difficult to explain. There was mystery in your timing, mystery in your silence, mystery in the way certain truths about you became clearer, only after distance created perspective. That is why these conversations continued returning to your name. One friend believed many people misunderstand you because they only see the surface. The other believed anyone who gets close enough eventually realizes your emotional impact is far stronger than expected. And because of those opinions, the person you love began looking again at moments they had nearly dismissed before. Moments they once considered small. Moments they once considered ordinary. Moments that now seemed important. Then something happened that changed the entire direction of the conversation. One sentence entered the room. One simple observation. One question that nobody expected. The friend who had been speaking with certainty finally asked something that caused everything to stop. They wondered why silence always appeared whenever your name entered the conversation. They wondered why the person they were speaking to became thoughtful every time the subject returned to you. The question hung in the air. No answer came immediately. The silence itself became noticeable. And in that moment, everyone understood something. Sometimes a lack of words reveals more than a speech ever could. The person you love looked away. But inside, memories had already become louder than the conversation around them. Feelings they had kept hidden began moving closer to the surface. Certain truths became harder to deny. Both friends noticed it. Both friends understood that there was more inside that heart than had ever been openly admitted. That realization changed everything. Your name remained present. The opinions became stronger. The emotions became clearer. And suddenly it seemed possible that the next chapter might be very different from the one that came before. Because sometimes two opposing voices do not create confusion. Sometimes they reveal a truth that someone has been trying not to face. The silence that followed carried meaning. It carried reflection. It carried memories. And perhaps most importantly, it carried honesty. Because what happened after that silence revealed even more than the discussion itself. The person you love did not rush to defend you. They did not rush to explain you. They did not change the subject. People usually do that when something holds no importance. But they did not. Instead, they remained still. The pause lasted longer than expected. And during that pause, both friends realized they had touched something real. Something deeper than curiosity. Something deeper than simple interest. Something that had been quietly living inside the heart for far longer than anyone realized. One friend leaned forward again. This time they spoke with even greater certainty. They explained that some people leave memories that fade with time. Others do not. They said certain names continue returning unexpectedly. Certain people continue appearing in thoughts, even when life becomes busy. Certain connections continue asking for attention long after distance arrives. And somehow, your name seemed to belong in that category. The person you love listened carefully because those words matched something they had already been feeling. The second friend responded in a different way. They explained that your quiet nature causes people to underestimate your impact. You do not always demand attention. You do not always make noise. Yet somehow, your absence becomes noticeable the moment you are gone. People realize your importance after the space you occupied becomes empty. And that is why so many thoughts continue surrounding you. Not because you force your way into people's minds, but because something remains behind after every interaction. Something meaningful. Something difficult to replace. Then another memory surfaced, a small moment connected to you. A moment that seemed ordinary at the time, yet now it returned with surprising strength. Perhaps it was a simple sentence. Perhaps it was an honest reaction. Perhaps it was a moment when your sincerity appeared naturally without any effort. Whatever it was, that memory suddenly became evidence. Evidence that there is more to you than people initially understand. One friend said your heart appears loyal, even when circumstances become uncertain. The other agreed that loyalty like that is rare, and because it is rare, it creates strong attachment. People do not always know how to respond when they encounter something genuine. Sometimes they become drawn toward it. Sometimes they become cautious of it. But they rarely forget it. As the discussion continued, the person you love listened carefully. And for the first time, instead of resisting what was being said, they quietly began agreeing with parts of it. Not aloud, not openly, but within themselves. And that silent agreement carried more meaning than anyone in the room could fully understand. Stay until the end. Something important is waiting to be revealed. Because after that moment, your name was spoken again. This time, it carried emotion. There was no laughter. There were no distractions. There was only seriousness. The atmosphere felt different. The conversation slowed down. Every person involved seemed to understand that they were no longer discussing something ordinary. One of the friends noticed something that could no longer be ignored. They pointed out how differently the person you love speaks whenever your name enters a conversation. That observation landed deeply, because it was true. The answer did not need to be spoken aloud. Everyone already understood it. Simple details connected to you seem to receive unusual attention. Small moments become memorable. Ordinary interactions gain meaning long after they have passed. Things that might seem insignificant with other people somehow remain important when they involve you. That is exactly why the two friends have developed such strong opinions. They have watched carefully. They have observed patterns. They have noticed how the energy changes whenever your name appears. One friend believes this connection deserves to be understood before it is ignored. The other believes ignoring it may no longer be possible. And somewhere between those two opinions, the person you love has begun realizing that both voices may be seeing different parts of the same truth. Stay until the end, because something hidden is slowly rising to the surface. There is another detail you may not know. Recently, your name appeared unexpectedly during an entirely different moment. No one planned for it. No one prepared for it. Yet the reaction came immediately. There was a pause. The same pause that has appeared before. The same silence that arrives without warning. The kind of silence people cannot force. The kind of silence that reveals more than words. Everyone noticed it. Because when someone carries little importance, the heart remains unchanged. The conversation continues normally. Nothing shifts. But when someone means more, even a single mention can change everything. That silence appeared again, and both friends recognized it immediately. Now they are paying closer attention than ever before. They understand that something about you continues reaching places that logic alone cannot fully explain. One friend believes this means your importance is growing. The other believes emotions are already further along than anyone wants to admit. The conversation became quieter after that. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everyone was thinking. Everyone was connecting pieces together. Everyone was noticing things that once seemed unrelated. Then came one of the strongest moments yet. One friend carefully pointed out something that had been overlooked for too long. They noticed how the person's expression changes whenever the future is mentioned in connection with you. That observation created another pause. No quick response followed, no immediate explanation arrived. There was only reflection, only thought, only that familiar silence that continues revealing more than words. And during that silence, memories returned once again. Moments when your kindness stood out naturally. Moments when your patience became visible. Moments when your absence felt longer than expected. Moments that once seemed small but now appear meaningful. That is why the opinions remain strong. That is why your name continues carrying weight. And that is why the person you love has begun questioning things they once tried very hard to keep simple. Because sometimes outside voices do not create confusion. Sometimes they reveal what the heart has been quietly saying all along. The conversation did not end there. If anything, it became more intense. Now every new moment connected to you is being noticed more carefully. Every detail matters. Every reaction matters. Every unexpected memory matters. The smallest things no longer seem small. One of those friends has even begun believing that an important moment is approaching. A moment when everything hidden becomes difficult to keep hidden. Not because anyone forces it, not because pressure appears, but because truth eventually grows stronger than hesitation. Truth has a way of finding its own path. And when that moment finally arrives, the person you love may understand why these two opinions have remained impossible to ignore. But something even more surprising has started happening. Those opinions are now influencing the way your name is heard whenever it appears. The person you love no longer hears your name as something ordinary. Every mention feels different. Every mention carries meaning. Every mention seems connected to something deeper, waiting to be understood. Stay until the end, because the next part reveals why this has become impossible to forget. One of the friends recently returned to the subject again. No one planned to discuss it. There were many other topics available, yet somehow the conversation returned to you. It happened naturally, almost as if unfinished thoughts refused to remain silent. The first friend spoke with certainty. They explained that some people leave behind a feeling of calm even after they leave a room. According to that friend, you have that effect. Your presence does not disappear immediately. Something remains. People continue thinking. People continue remembering. The feeling stays longer than expected. The second friend viewed it differently. They believed what makes you stand out is not only what people see, it is what people discover later. Your strongest qualities are often not obvious at first. They reveal themselves slowly, piece by piece, moment by moment. And because of that, opinions about you tend to grow stronger with time instead of fading away. The person you love listened carefully. This time there was no attempt to change the subject, no effort to move away from the discussion, only attention, only listening, only reflection. Then another memory was mentioned, a very small moment, a moment that almost disappeared into the past. At the time it seemed ordinary, but now it looked different. Both friends remembered it clearly. It was a moment when you responded with honesty while others expected something else. You did not perform, you did not pretend, you simply remained sincere. That simple moment now carried unexpected significance. One friend believed it revealed the true nature of your heart. The other believed it demonstrated a kind of trustworthiness that cannot be easily imitated. And suddenly that memory became powerful evidence. Evidence that there is more to you than people first realize. The person you love remembered the same moment immediately. The memory returned with remarkable clarity, and once again, silence appeared. Stay until the end, because what happened next changed the atmosphere completely. After that silence, one friend raised another question. A question no one had fully considered before. Why does every conversation about you become deeper than expected? The room grew quiet. No answer arrived quickly. Some questions are difficult because answering them means revealing more than intended. The person you love became thoughtful, careful, almost protective of something private. Both friends noticed it. Both friends understood that your name had entered a place where emotions could no longer remain completely neutral. One friend believes you represent a sense of peace that is difficult to find. The other believes that once someone truly experiences that peace, forgetting it becomes almost impossible. Those two opinions now exist together, side by side, and both continue growing stronger. Something else happened not long after. Another person spoke positively about you during a separate conversation. The reaction was immediate, not dramatic, not obvious, but impossible to miss. Attention sharpened, listening became deeper. A simple compliment connected to you suddenly carried unusual importance. One friend noticed it immediately. They quietly pointed out that reactions often reveal what words try to hide. That observation remained in everyone's mind, because it felt true. The person you love became quieter again, not because they disagreed, but because they understood that even silence had become meaningful. Even silence was now being noticed. The first friend then shared another thought. Some people enter life quietly. They ask for nothing. They demand nothing. Yet over time, they become impossible to replace in thought. The statement was not directed toward anyone by name, but everyone understood who it was about. The second friend added something equally important. Certain names begin as ordinary names, then slowly become connected to memories, then emotions, then meaning. And eventually, those names carry more weight than anyone expected. Once again, your name remained at the center. The person you loved did not deny any of it. There was only a long pause, then a slow breath. The kind of breath people take when a truth is standing very close. The reason these opinions continue growing stronger is actually simple. Every new memory connected to you seems to confirm what both friends already suspect. Your kindness is remembered. Your patience is remembered. Your sincerity is remembered. Even moments when you said very little are remembered with unusual clarity. Nothing seems to disappear completely. Everything continues, leaving an impression. That is why one friend now believes another important conversation is coming. A conversation where your name will no longer be discussed only as an idea. A conversation where your place in someone's life becomes impossible to overlook. That possibility has already begun changing how the person you love sees everything connected to you. Because once two different voices point toward the same truth from different directions, pretending nothing is happening becomes much harder. One voice speaks with certainty, the other speaks with caution. Yet both continue arriving at the same destination, and that realization is becoming impossible to ignore. Perhaps the most surprising part is that one of those friends no longer speaks with doubt at all. Their confidence has grown stronger. They no longer see this as something temporary. They no longer believe these reactions are accidental. The second friend still speaks carefully, but even caution now carries respect. Even hesitation now carries understanding. And somewhere between confidence and caution, the person you love is beginning to recognize something important. Your presence has already left a deeper mark than anyone expected. That is why the silence keeps returning. That is why your name keeps appearing again and again. That is why memories connected to you continue carrying so much weight. And that is why the next moment may finally reveal the answer everyone has been quietly circling around. Then something happened that no one expected. The conversation returned to you once more. But this time, the energy felt completely different. It was quieter on the surface, yet far deeper underneath. And everyone in that moment could feel that something important was slowly moving closer. The conversation had changed completely by this point. It was no longer just two opinions being shared from different perspectives. It had become something closer to a realization. Both friends seemed to have reached a place where they could no longer ignore what your name continued to awaken whenever it appeared. Stay until the end. Something important is waiting to be revealed. One of those friends began explaining that some people are remembered because they are loud. They attract attention. They create noise around themselves. People notice them immediately. But there are other people who leave a different kind of impression. Their presence creates questions. Their memory continues returning long after they are gone. Their influence becomes clearer with time instead of fading away. According to that friend, you belong to that second group. You are not remembered because of noise. You are remembered because certain moments connected to you refuse to disappear. They remain. They return. They continue carrying meaning long after they should have been forgotten. The second friend listened carefully. This was the same person who had once spoken with caution. The same person who had questioned what your presence might create. But this time there was no disagreement. Instead, that friend admitted something important. Every new detail connected to you seemed to strengthen what had already been noticed before. Nothing appeared to weaken it. Nothing appeared to contradict it.